Hey guys, I want to make this video to speak a little bit about affirmative action and kind of discuss my views on it. And the picture, by the way, is Margaret Sanger, of course, who is the founder of Planned Parenthood and the next candidate of not really a feminist. MRAs are often criticized for being racist or anti-women because of a stance against affirmative action and the preferential hiring of basically what is a person who looks a certain way rather than hiring them based on their skill set and how good they do the job. People who understand the system might notice that my words that I used to describe affirmative action as being the preferential hiring of somebody that looks a certain way is very ironic, since affirmative action was supposedly put into place to stop discrimination against the very same thing. And of course, as with a lot of things that the government puts its foot in, it ended up working completely the opposite way. Affirmative action is racism. There's just no two ways about it. But since I know that people might not kind of see that right now, even though it's the most obvious thing to see when you think about it, I'm going to refer to affirmative action, and which is the preferential hiring of a minority over, I guess, a white male, and blatant racism, which is the preferential hiring of a white male over a woman and or black person, as two separate entities. But I'll show you similarities, and perhaps while I show you these similarities, try to describe exactly why they are so, both systems are so horrible. When you live in a big country, it's easy to forget that we are a clan or a company in a way, and we always have companies and clans competing against us, and they have their values and we have our values, and the combination of our values will influence how a system works, and it will influence who's going to prosper or not. So if we have the best set of values, we're going to prosper, and the other country is not. And of course, there's other things that come into play, like natural resources and a bit of luck. But certainly, the system we use to organize how our society works is going to influence where we stand in the world. And one thing that affirmative action and racism have in common, and again, it's really funny saying this to me because they're the same thing. Affirmative action is racism. One thing they have in common is that neither one of them will work in the long term unless the whole world adopts the same kind of policy, and that's simply not realistic. Racism is not exclusive to a certain race. While people may make it look that way, like racism is only for black people or sexism is only for women, it really determines where in the country you're from or where in the world you're from. See, if I would go to Africa, perhaps I would be discriminated against for being white there, and that would still be racism. So it's not really exclusive at all. And if I went to Sweden, I'd be discriminated for being a man or white as well, I guess. And when a company or a clan discriminates upon a certain race of people based on how they look rather than how well they do the job, they simply fail. And it's as simple as that. When Hitler discriminated against the Jews, Einstein went over to America and invented the atom bomb there. So that's the simplest, most explanation of what was happening. Imagine if Hitler didn't discriminate against Einstein. Einstein would have stayed there, and we would all be hailing Hitler right now. People have this idea that there's a bunch of really talented women running around who are not hired simply based on their looks. And I can't believe anyone can sit there and tell me that there isn't one company in the whole world that would not hire these women. Because if that company hired all these talented women who are really awesome at their job and who are just discriminated against, then that company would be the shit. not only would people appreciate that company for hiring all these women, like people seem to do in the society, but that company will just simply work really well, and it will compete with the other companies that aren't hiring these talented women and will kick all their asses. And of course, naturally, through just natural selection, that company would become the beacon of how a company should be run. The other terrible injustice of affirmative action is how people have started to perceive the people that benefit from it. Feminists are often screaming that women aren't getting enough respect. Well, how do you expect to get respect when you are constantly getting someone to give you a hand up, that wall, while the rest of us are climbing up the wall ourselves? You expect the same respect from people, even while you get the privilege that other people don't get, and that's just not the way respect works. If two people are trying to get across a river and one of the people swims across and swims against the current and has great technique, and then the other person just takes the bridge across, the person that takes the bridge across cannot expect to have the same respect as the person who swam across, even if they say that, look, I've trained as well and I could have done that swim if I wanted to, but I was allowed to take this bridge and I took it. You're not going to have the same respect. It's just not the way respect works. And that's a real shame, because I do believe that there are women who are excellent at the job, and of course there are plenty of minorities who are excellent at the jobs that they do, and they should be respected for it. But that's just the natural way of how people's minds work and how people work. That's just not going to happen, because we can't see you showing us how good you are at something when affirmative action exists. It's always going to be at the back of people's minds, and you're never going to have the true respect that you deserve as a human being, not as any particular race or sex, as a human being, by doing what you do well. Another way that preferential hiring screws over everybody is that the companies that ignore the laws and affirmative action, I should say that one of the differences between affirmative action and just racism is that affirmative action is really a law made by the government, and companies that go against laws are generally criminal organizations. So a good example would be if women were preferentially hired into the police force. The criminal organization doesn't have the restriction of having to hire like a certain amount of women. They would simply hire the best people to do the job. So while the quality of the police force will fall, and perhaps the police, to counter that, the police force will have to have more money and hire more people because it won't be as efficient. The criminal networks will not have this problem, since they don't follow laws in general, and they will in fact prosper, and that's not a very nice thing for anybody. So that's my stance on affirmative action in a nutshell, but I might make another video of this topic later on. But basically, if you still think that this stance is racist, then I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree at this point. But I really ask you to ask yourself, who really is racist here? Me, who is against affirmative action and state-sponsored discrimination, or the feminists who are for it? Thank you.